on Prime Crime.
Okay, 911, where's emergency?
There's a house smoking and there's an alarm going off inside.
A suspicious fire consumes a small-town home, leaving behind a chilling mystery.
She was a trained EMT and paramedic within 20 feet of 3 exits, and she didn't make it out. Something had to have happened to her.
As investigators sift through the ashes, questions swirl, revealing a sinister plot hidden in plain sight.
That leads me to believe it was an accident. Is that correct?
Yes or no?
I think I'd like to talk to an attorney.
You think you'd like to talk to an attorney, or do you want to talk to an attorney? Because I think I'd like a ham sandwich right now.
Hey there, everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime, where we break down some of the most compelling and memorable true crime cases from across the country. When a fire breaks out at a rural home on the outskirts of Chicago, Illinois, investigators uncover evidence suggesting there may be more to the blaze than meets the eye, and what follows becomes a twisted tale that no one saw coming.
Okay, 911, where's emergency?
There's a house smoking on South Hannah. It's just up the street.
You see the smoke coming from the house?
Yes, and there's an alarm going off inside.
November 25th, 2020, the night before Thanksgiving, Mount Morris fire crews respond to reports of smoke billowing from a home.
What kind of smoke is coming from the house?
It's like it's heavy smoke. All I know is I see smoke, lots of smoke.
Several local firehouses quickly dispatch crews to the home of 27-year-old Melissa Lamesch, who's 9 months pregnant.
The Ogle County Sheriff and several fire protection districts and fire departments come to the Lamesch home. That home was her father, Gus Lamesch's home, where he was allowing Melissa to live with her brother, Gus, during the tail end of her pregnancy.
I'm on scene. I got a 30 by 50 single-story wood frame. I've got heavy smoke showing from the roof.
November 25th was a big day for us. My youngest daughter, Melissa's youngest sister, November 25th is her birthday. That afternoon, I went out to the grocery store to, get a cake. An hour or two later, I got a phone call from my son, Carl. And the phone call was, "Have you heard from Melissa today?" And I didn't think anything of it at first because it was Julia's birthday. We were gonna hear from Melissa at some point. Melissa was gonna call, wish Julia happy birthday.
We've got multiple lines working on the fire. We've got things knocked down at this time. The fire is under control, and we're checking for hot spots.
It was COVID, so Melissa and Gus had planned a quiet Thanksgiving together. I also knew on Wednesday night that we were most likely going to hear from Melissa because Melissa was supposed to go to the hospital early on Friday morning to be induced.
I made contact with the homeowner who's out of town. He's going to call me back and let me know if he makes contact with the daughter.
Carl said Gus's house was on fire. My heart, it just sank. Who's seen Melissa? Do we even know Melissa's at the house? Was she out running more last-minute errands? What if she was taking a nap? So I called the non-emergency phone number and I said, I need you to check to see if there's a car, because at this point in time, we are missing a pregnant woman.
Once the flames are extinguished, what fire crews find next is devastating.
Advising there has to be one subject inside the residence, one subject inside.
Message received, Ogle. Thank you.
They make their way in to what is a living room in the front area of the home, and they don't see anything unusual other than burn damage. And then they make their way to a kitchen area where they find Melissa.
We've moved the victim in at this time. We're working on removing him from the structure.
They had to drag her body through the house where the body gathered and picked up, debris, dust, dirt, rocks, ashes, And then her body was eventually taken out to the grass where they attempted resuscitation and realized that she was deceased.
After a long night of standing out in the street in Mount Morris, watching 9 responding agencies that came for that house fire, seeing the ambulance that Melissa was in, we were just all numb, in a state of shock.
As the reality of Melissa's death began to set in, her parents and siblings focused on the day ahead, how to spend Thanksgiving together as a family. But they soon realized they had unresolved matters to take care of, as Melissa was just 2 days away from giving birth to her first child.
Thursday came, so my children and Gus all came to my mom's house. And just not thinking, we accidentally set an extra place at the table. That was very hard. Friday morning came, and it dawned on Cassie and I, we need to call this hospital. They're expecting a patient that's not going to arrive.
At just 27 years old, Melissa Lamesch is dead, and first responders can't save her son, who she and her family had lovingly given the name Barrett.
Melissa lit up a room when she came in. I don't know what phrase to use. We had an interesting relationship. As it turns out, she and I are a lot more alike than either of us would care to admit. She was definitely a mix of sugar and spice. She had the great personality, but oh, don't upset her. She was gonna dig those feet in the ground. When Melissa was younger, she was a little more shy. As she blossomed through high school, more of the outgoingness started to come out. And when she graduated high school, Melissa kind of flip-flopped around a little bit, going to some community colleges before figuring out that the EMT paramedic lifestyle was her path.
But something about the fire wasn't sitting right with investigators or Melissa's family.
She was working on her paramedic licensure. She was trained, a trained EMT and paramedic, in a ranch-style home within 20 feet of 3 exits, and she didn't make it out. Something had to have happened to her.
Questions begin to surface once authorities take a closer look at the remnants of the blaze.
There was heavy damage in certain areas of the home, but it was not a complete destruction of the structure. What they believe is the origin of the fire is in the kitchen. They called in the Illinois State Police Fire Marshal. He was able to say that the origin of the fire was in a random cabinet above a stove.
They fairly quickly determined that this isn't, an electrical fire that started in the wall. This is a man-made fire. This could be arson.
As officials dig deeper into the charred remains of Melissa's home, up next, their instincts could soon be proven right.
I would have believed heart attack, stroke, any random medical anomaly. Mount Morris is Smallville, USA. This is the kind of crime that does not happen out here in Ogle County.
They talked in the living room after sex, got dressed, and then left.
She walked in the door, she shut the door when I left.
November 2020, Mount Morris, Illinois. The Lamesch family is grieving the loss of EMT and young mom-to-be, 27-year-old Melissa Lamesch, and her unborn son following a house fire. The questions now on everyone's mind after determining the fire was likely no accident: what exactly happened and who could have done this?
The investigators kept a very open mind. They did what good investigators do. They looked through the evidence. They determined first whether or not the fire was accidental versus man-made. They then speak to a bunch of people in Melissa Lamesch's life.
And through their investigation, one name comes up fairly quickly.
The police asked her family members who may have seen her or talked to her that day. Her older sister had spoken with her, Cassandra Ball, and her younger brother, Gus, had also talked to her at some point.
They find out that the last person who witnesses would say was at the house that day was a man by the name of Matthew Plody.
Melissa was very excited to become a mom. At first, a little scared. I obviously had some mixed emotions because Melissa was not in a long-term relationship of any kind. Over the summer, Melissa had mentioned a few times the father of the child. She actually didn't tell us for a long time. She kind of laid some hints, and my oldest daughter, Cassie, kind of did some Facebook stalking to figure out who he was for sure.
Matt grew up kind of out in the country. His dad was a farmer and engineer. His mom was very actively involved in the community. He played in the local church band. He was an Eagle Scout. He always had an interest in helping people. He went to school to become an EMT, and then eventually he was trained to be an EMT paramedic with the fire department.
Of course, we had our concerns, and immediately we spoke with the chief of police and the detectives, who then found Matthew that night and sat down with him.
Detectives bring Plody into the station to talk, and he immediately opens up.
He spoke to Melissa's brother on the phone. He called me. He asked me if I saw her today. I said, yeah, I was over. And then as he hung up, he said that I was the last one there, and I was kind of alarmed about that. What else did he tell you? I don't remember. Melissa is deceased.
Cassie had been on the phone with Melissa when Matthew came to the door. Melissa had said to Cassie, I'm gonna make this quick with him and I'll call you right back. Cassie was expecting a phone call back, but that never came. At first, the story we heard was he had been there 10 minutes. You know, he was in and out very quickly.
You got some more spot with him? Around 1. Did she call you over today? No, she did not. Did you call her, tell her to come by, or just decided to? Just stop in and chat. We've had lunch a few times. How many times have you been to the house in Mount Morris? 5 or 6.
When the conversation turns to the nature of Plody's relationship with Melissa, he speaks rather candidly.
Were you guys ever in a dating relationship? No. Like in college. We were seeing each other.
They had met when Matt was still in college. They connected and they had an on and off relationship over the next 10 years, mostly off. Colloquially, we would probably just call it a hookup relationship.
So you guys just kind of off and on since 2014? More off. I had seen two of the girls, and she was with the guy somewhere else. Obviously, you were together at some point. She's pregnant. Were you actually dating at the time, or was it just... Okay.
Some people referred to him as her boyfriend. Some people say that they were just kind of in a undefined relationship thing, but he admits that he's the father of the child.
When did she notify you that she was pregnant? May or April. Were you guys considering abortion? I asked her about it, and she said no, which it's not my choice. So today you just decided that you were going to buzz over and talk. How long were you at the house? It wasn't more than an hour, I don't think.
Matt had mentioned that they had talked about there being a deadline. He's referencing that there was a timeline by which they had to decide if they were gonna keep the baby. And Matt said, yeah, I brought it up to her once. She said she didn't want to abort the baby, and that's where he left it.
What did you guys talk about today? Finances. We talked about it before, and previously I wasn't really on board. But today, last couple weeks or so, I wanted to be involved. I know my parents want to be involved.
Was she receptive to you being around a little bit more?
She said that she would want, time and that we could work out and schedule visits.
All those times that you were there, I mean, you guys got along and everything, right? She wasn't mad at you for just hopping by randomly, or?
No, it was so 2-3 weeks ago. She had said that she wasn't sure because my parents really wanted to be involved. I said, whether or not you and I have a relationship about this, and that was before we talked money, and I told her, like grandparents' rights are a thing, so my parents are gonna want to be involved. That was the only time that we ever had like if you even call it a tiff about it. And then she later said, that's something we can work on.
But Melissa's family understood the situation to be very different.
He really wasn't talking much with Melissa, as far as I understood it. What Melissa ended up saying was, he's never going to grow up. And she came to terms with that. She did accept the fact that he didn't want to be in the baby's life. But in Melissa's eyes, the rest of his family, they deserved to know the baby if they chose.
Melissa Lamesch went to Matthew's parents, to their home, and said along the lines of, hi, I'm Melissa, I'm having your son's baby, you're gonna be grandparents. And so of course they said that they did want to be involved.
In conversation at the kitchen table for about an hour. Then what? We had sex. What happened after sex? Small talk for 10 minutes and I left. Was there anybody else in the house when you were there? No, there wasn't. Anybody in between? Did anybody knock on the door, stop over? No.
Matt never hid that he was there from anybody. And this is hours after she's allegedly been killed and someone set this house on fire, and Matt Plody is there telling police, yes, I was there. I saw her. We had sex. I talked to her about the birth of the child. And that when he left, she was microwaving some lunch.
With nothing to hold Plody on, the interview ends. Days after the fire, officials conduct an autopsy, and the results are shocking.
They actually determine that there's no soot or smoke in her throat, and there's some contusions kind of on her face and neck, which are very indicative of being strangled.
I myself went into huge denial. I was so upset, so brokenhearted. I couldn't stomach that anybody would be so angry or that anyone would hate my daughter so much as to want to erase her from this earth.
A new layer begins to unfold. Not only do investigators have an arson to solve, but now a murder. And to crack this case, they need to get creative.
Thinking to yourself, I'm just not going to say anything. Not going to say anything. They'll go away. They'll go away. We're not going away. This isn't going to go away.
By the way, as you can see from the content that we cover here on Prime Crime, it just shows you that the world is not a safe place. But one of the things that we try to do is partner with companies that can help to protect you, and that includes Home Title Lock. Because I didn't know this, but apparently home title fraud is just rampant. Yeah, I met with the people over at Home Title Lock. Completely freaked me out. So this is an example of a fraudulent quitclaim deed. It got filled out with my information, a forged signature, fake notary seal. So not only can my property just get transferred behind my back, but the scammers, they go after the equity. They take out loans using your home as collateral. They do all this, they disappear, they leave you with a legal and financial nightmare. But that is where Home Title Lock comes in to give you peace of mind, especially with their triple lock protection. Why? because that gets you 24/7 monitoring, alerts of any changes, restoration services at no out-of-pocket cost to you. So to protect your home, go to HometitleLock.com/primecrime. Use our promo code PrimeCrime. You'll get a 30-day free trial of the triple lock protection and a free title history report to make sure you aren't already a victim.
Nobody's forcing you, beating you, doing anything, but you've just got to get this off your chest. You've got to do the right thing.
Homicide detectives have their suspicions that Matthew Plody knows more than he's saying about the untimely deaths of 27-year-old Melissa Lamesch and their unborn son. Almost a year after the fire, in August 2021, police bring Plody in to talk once more, with a warrant for a DNA sample.
Did you go over there Monday and then Wednesday? Monday you didn't do it, but Wednesday you made sure it got done? Or did you just show up Wednesday and after you guys had sex something happened? Something went wrong? What scenario is it, Matt?
They confront Plody on what happened that afternoon almost a year prior, but this time, he's pretty tight-lipped.
Once you start down that road, it's hard to get out of it. It's hard to pull yourself back. And whatever anger, whatever emotions you were feeling inside of you at the time, whatever scenario, Matt, this is the end result right here. So how did we get here?
They try everything from, look, if you just come clean with us now, we'll talk to the DA on your behalf, to, don't you want your side of the story to be out so that people won't think that you're this raging murderer?
People are going to make it an opinion that you went there, did horrific things, pre-planned, took a little murder kit with you, went along, did it.
What that technique does is it tries to paint a much more serious picture of what the person is in so that they will at least give you something.
There were 4 people there that day. You were there. Melissa was there. Amy was there. And God was there. Matthew, what happened there that day? You didn't go over there to kill Tom and Nancy's grandchild. Something happened. Once that ball's in motion, sometimes you just can't. It's too late. She may have sparked it by something she said, something she did. Is that what happened, Matt? Matt, your silence. Stephanie.
Is he telling the truth when he says he's over there because he wants to be more involved in the baby's life? The only one person who can answer that with any degree of certainty is, of course, Mr. Plody himself.
Matt, we're giving you the opportunity to tell us this wasn't something you had planned out for days, weeks, months at a time. That a good person, in the blink of an eye, can make a bad decision that will haunt them for the rest of their life.
The police throw a lot of things at him over and over again. They sound like a broken record. They were just telling him what they believe happened over and over again in hope that Matt would somehow confirm their theory of this case.
Throughout this hours-long interaction, the detectives do most of the talking. But eventually, Plody does say something which sets off Detective Brian Ketter.
If you're to this point, why am I not under arrest?
We want your side of the story. And I'm not going to lie to you, Matt. The longer we talk, the more I think that you planned this thing out months ahead of time. And you went over there Monday to kill her, but you didn't have the balls to do it, so you left. And you called off sick, and you went back Wednesday, and you finished what you couldn't do on Monday. And now they're both dead. So if this is not a mistake, and if you're not sorry for killing your kid, then I think you got rid of a mistake that happened 9 months ago. If this isn't a mistake and you're not sorry for doing this to your own son, then you planned this out ahead of time, and you meant to do this.
Is that what happened, Matt?
Did I plan to hurt her?
Yeah.
No.
You said it was not premeditated, yes? Matt, yes? You didn't plan this out, right?
I said I never wanted to hurt her.
If you didn't want to do it, that leads me to believe it was an accident. Is that correct? You and your own...
Yes or no, Matt?
You just said you didn't want to hurt her. Is that yes?
Yes.
Matt was saying, I didn't go there to hurt her. I didn't go there to do anything to her. I went there to talk to her, and then I went about the rest of my day.
You have no reason to say why you went from being nice man public service to a monster and killed them and lit the house on fire because you went there to kill them.
You did not want to hurt her. Is that correct?
Correct.
What happened that it ended up hurting her and killing her? Did you two have an argument?
Your paper said I have the right to not say anything.
You are correct.
This time, the tactic that's taken by law enforcement is we want you to confess. You are clearly the target of our investigation. There is no good cop in the room now. Plody just kind of clams up. He does not give them the real confession that they're looking for.
You drove from Malta to there, leaving your phone at home so cops couldn't track you, because you've probably seen that somewhere, read it somewhere on the internet, and you drive there, she opens the door, bam, it's on. You killed her, and then you lied, said you haven't seen her in forever.
And Matthew Plody has a secret, one that detectives must carefully extract.
You saw that picture, I could see it in your expression. That's the last time you saw Melissa.
Matt, why did you do that to her?
Were you involved in another relationship that you didn't want them to know that you had a child? Who were you dating?
Katie.
They knew that he had another relationship going on with another woman. They accuse him of not wanting to have anything to do with Melissa.
Are you guys currently dating?
Yes.
Does she know about Melissa?
No.
So had Melissa given birth on Friday, that would have been a surprise to Katie.
Yeah, I was going to break up with Katie that evening. I didn't.
They repeat to him, why wouldn't he have told, his parents about this? Why wouldn't he have told family members about this? And oh, well, that's because you didn't want this child. You didn't want Melissa in your life. Come on, Matt, this is serious.
What was Tuesday night? Some would call it a booty call.
Was that Katie or was it somebody else? Was it Alyssa?
You're asking or you're telling?
I'm asking.
Yes.
Maybe to his detriment, he was more interested in having female relationships, and that's just the life he led.
In 2 days, your life was going to change. And in one moment, you took care of that problem, but you created a much bigger one for yourself.
That's when Plody begins shutting down completely.
What is your explanation for everything I just said to you?
Second time I said I think I'd like to talk to an attorney.
You think you'd like to talk to an attorney, or do you want to talk to an attorney? Because I think I'd like a ham sandwich right now. So do you think you want to talk to an attorney, Matt, or do you want to talk to an attorney?
Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Yes, I would like to talk to an attorney.
Detectives still can't hold Plody on any charges. A month goes by, and that's when investigators try an unconventional approach.
Hello? Matt. Keith. All I want to do is do a well-being check, and I'd like to talk to you.
They reach out to the 33-year-old paramedic's fire chief.
Obviously, I have a million questions in my mind, and I guess you could say I'm blindsided by all of this.
The Ogle County Sheriff asked Matt's fire chief, where he worked, to wear a wire to talk to Matt about this whole incident.
I had to make a statement to the department. There is a death investigation and you're involved with it. I mean, what happened? I went over and...
Matt maintains, as he always had, that he didn't have anything to do with it. He did admit that he had sort of this relationship with her, that it wasn't serious, and that he just doesn't talk about it with a lot of people. Matt was reserved. He kept to himself. The guys that he worked with, he didn't tell them a lot about his personal life. And that became a running storyline, that because Matt didn't tell all of his personal details to his coworkers, that meant he was hiding something. And that simply was not the case.
So the day you called in sick, that's when you went and saw her then? So you leave and then there's the fire? Again, you get called by the police and you're the person that was last with her or whatever. a person. Yeah. When you gave him your statement, I mean, are you, I mean, what, that's not good enough? I don't know why it's not good enough. I can't have you come back to work with what's being alleged right now.
Nearly a year and a half goes by with no arrests made. Coming up, can detectives pull the evidence together to finally charge someone with Melissa's murder?
Did you have a premeditated plan to go there, take a life? You need to show everyone that you're not the monster.
Hey guys, I hope you know how much we really appreciate you following this story with us. We want you to remember these victims, explain the justice system to you, explain how investigations work. And one of the reasons that we're able to bring you these kinds of stories is because of the incredible support that we get from our sponsors, like our proud partner, Morgan & Morgan. Look, if you should get injured, America's largest injury law firm, they may be who you want in your corner. They have an army of over 1,000 attorneys. They have an amazing track record, like recent verdicts of $12 million in Florida and $26 million in Philadelphia. These, by the way, are higher than the highest insurance offers in these cases. There's no upfront fee. The whole process can be done right from your smartphone. It is so simple. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/primecrime.
The neighbor watched you walk in the door.
You freely admitted you wanted her to abort the baby. She wasn't going to do it. She basically wrote you off.
It's not looking good.
For months, authorities suspected Matthew Plody of strangling Melissa Lamesch and starting a fire in her kitchen, which resulted in the death of her and their unborn son. But so far, they hadn't had enough to arrest him until over a year after Melissa's death, when Plody is paid a visit by officers.
Hello there. Turn around. Hands behind your back.
In addition to having a part-time job, doing some contract work, Matt also worked part-time at an insurance office. In March of 2022, he was at work and there was a surprise visit from the police.
Let's slide in there.
Those 469 days were absolute torture. I live in a small town called Malta. He grew up in Malta. He worked for a while on their fire department. So part of those 469 days, I lived in absolute fear of calling 911 should my family need help. I was absolutely scared to death. 469 days felt like forever.
Though it took over a year to build their case, through witnesses and evidence, Matthew Plody is officially charged with first-degree murder, intentional homicide of an unborn child, aggravated battery, concealment of a homicide, and arson, which could lead to a life sentence.
A really important thing that they discover is that Matthew Plody's DNA is under her fingernails. There are a number of ways that that could happen, one of which is obviously defensive wounds. He has a pretty big motive, past statements to other people about his feelings about the child. They get a search warrant, they go around Matthew Plody's property, they go through his garbage, they find gloves, they find a pink Bic lighter, and they find a Fitbit. They basically had what they thought they needed. This is kind of a bow on top.
Now that Matt's been arrested, he's very aware of how serious this is. He's aware of the gravity of the situation. I think the police are hoping against all hope that he will just make some sort of admission statement.
So what does Matthew Plody have to say now? Has he changed his tune even a little bit? He's taken to an interrogation room to talk once more, as investigators make one final push for answers.
You were indicted by the grand jury yesterday. We know what happened, you know what happened, and God knows what happened.
At this point, he obviously knows they're pinning this on me, and they give him what I think is an opportunity to kind of save everybody from what will be an excruciatingly emotional ordeal if this has to go to trial.
Other people in the public, without something from you, are going to come up with the worst case scenario they can think of.
You were there. We know you had sex with her.
I told you we did.
There was other things that happened in that house, but we need to hear it from you.
The neighbor watched you walk in the door.
The Ogle County Sheriff was laser focused on Matt Plody as their lead murder suspect. And they never navigated away their sights from Matt. From their perspective, they didn't need anybody else because they had their guy from day one.
Matt, what are you telling yourself in here right now? What are you telling yourself? Take it to the grave? You can't do that, buddy. It's destroying you. You know it is. You need to show everyone that you're not the monster.
The judge overseeing the arraignment certainly took into account just the absolute brutality of this. Setting a bond of $10 million really kind of showcases where the judge's head is, because this is an exceptionally high bail, even for a murder charge.
Matthew Plody will face trial, but that case doesn't begin immediately. There are quite a few setbacks.
We struggled because obviously with COVID making us feel like things were taking longer. This isn't like an episode of Law and Order. You don't get your answers in an hour. You sure don't. Because then it still took another almost 2 years. The jury summonses go out, and it was almost like being back at day one. Just all so surreal.
More than 3 years after Melissa Lamesch's murder in March 2024, Matthew Plody goes on trial. It's there where the chilling facts surrounding the murder are revealed before a jury.
At the same time that he's approaching the door, Melissa's on the phone with her sister Cassie. And what does she say to Cassie? Matt's here again. He needs to stop doing this. I'll make it quick and I'll call you back. She never called her back because when the defendant left, she was dead. He was not seen leaving that house. No one else was seen going in.
This case hinges on the two killings and setting the fire. So the prosecution's theory is not that this was an accident, that he went over there and he intended to hurt her a bit and she died from it. The prosecution's theory from the minute they arrested him had been he intentionally caused the death. It was premeditated. He planned to do it.
I was the last one that stood by the ambulance that night. I was the last family member to leave the cemetery to watch the casket go down. So it was important to me to stay in the courtroom that whole time and hear the tough, see the tough.
This really comes down to who murdered Melissa Lamesch. There was no sign of natural death. She was strangled. There was no sign that she died in the fire. She had no soot in her airways, and she had no carbon dioxide in her blood. This defendant, Matthew Plody's DNA, is linked to the violence committed upon Melissa. The vaginal swabs, the anal swabs, fingernail scrapings from both of her hands. This was a violent sexual encounter. Melissa suffered blunt force trauma about her head shortly before her death. She had scrapings on her skin, and she had so many bruises on her legs. This is while she was alive.
No reasonable doubt in this case that this defendant killed Melissa and her baby. He doesn't deserve to be called a dad. I won't give him that. He doesn't deserve it. We murdered them, lit the house on fire. There's no doubt.
The defense's case is that there's no way to prove Plody is the one who killed Melissa.
There was a lot of debris that covered her body. The coroner that performed the first autopsy never cleaned her body. One of the very first things that you're taught is that if a body is covered in other debris or there's evidence of other hair or DNA, you should collect it. He never did any of those things. They had his DNA from day one. They had her body. He admitted that he had had sex with her, so certainly they would have had his DNA. That was no question. The Ogle County Sheriff's Office, over the course of 469 days of investigation, they slept. They slept on pursuing any other leads because Matthew Plody is our guy. There's no one else. We've got him. We pointed out several other people during this trial that the police just never investigated. They had another former boyfriend. There's also her father. Nobody wants to say that a father could kill his own child. They were so confident that it couldn't have been Gus that they just never took that any further. A neighbor across the street claiming that a man with hair and a hat on walked into the house. Matt was not a guy with hair. He was a completely bald guy. November 25th, 2020, Matt Plody told them, "Yep, I slept with her. I had sex with her. You're gonna find my DNA right there." And then not until March 8th of 2022 do they decide, "Yep, we've got everything we need on him. We finally got him." Ladies and gentlemen, they don't got him. They don't got him with proof beyond a reasonable doubt because they didn't eliminate any other doubts that you could possibly have. I think one of the state's biggest weaknesses and one of our best arguments was that they didn't do these other investigations.
Following less than a week of testimony and a handful of witnesses, the case is handed off to the jury to deliberate.
The last day of trial was a Friday, and the day ran a little longer than everyone had anticipated. The jury was staying until they made their decision.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Matthew Plody, guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of intentional homicide of an unborn child, guilty of aggravated domestic battery, guilty of residential arson, guilty of concealment of a homicidal death.
I sat in the back of the courtroom with my paper, and I had written the numbers 1 through 10 down. As the charges were read, I was writing on my piece of paper, G, charge 1, guilty. 2, I wrote another G. I wrote down those 10 G's for the guilty verdicts, and I could hear a little bit of gasps throughout the courtroom, but I was so afraid to look up. It wasn't as joyous as you want it to be. It was a relief, definitely, but very scary.
Ultimately, I think this was a very strong case for the prosecution. Had he showed up on that day in November and said, "Listen, here's me, I want to be a good dad, I want to be involved in the child's life, I want to be a part of this," it seems unlikely that that would have ended in her dying.
3 months after Matthew Plody is found guilty of all charges, he's sentenced to life in prison. Plody has since filed an appeal.
I think we have finally kind of actually accepted that feeling of relief. We as a family can start to heal within each other. The hardest part is, we all grieve at different rates. Mama stayed in denial for a very long time, whereas everybody else in the family went straight to anger. Like, my anger didn't hit till like a month ago, you know? So I think we've finally hit the point where we can be with each other again, you know? Like, be more like a family instead of just people that coexist with each other. Melissa portrayed to us, yeah, he's never gonna grow up. Did we miss how dangerous he really is? This didn't have to happen. All he had to do was walk away.
Melissa's family is left devastated by the loss of these 2 young lives taken way too soon. While her killer sits behind bars for the rest of his life, her loved ones must now cope with a pain that no prison sentence can cure. Melissa's story is a reminder of the deep impact of violence, but also the enduring strength of those left behind. That's all we have for you here on this episode of Prime Crime. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jesse Weber, and as always, stay safe.